Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Camille Crane, and I'm the BRIC Section Chief with FEMA Headquarters. I'm very excited to welcome you to the second section of the BRIC Summer Engagement Series, where we're going to be talking about the meaning of the BRIC name. Last week, we provided you a BRIC overview, and today we'll go deeper into the meaning of BRIC, Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities. Before we get started, I wanted to go through a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded so that we can share a link with stakeholders and partners who were not able to join us to attend today. In fact, I'm very excited to announce that if you go on FEMA's YouTube channel, you'll see a recording of last week's BRIC Overview. We intend to create a playlist where all 5 webinars will be. Therefore, we've muted all microphones to improve sound and video quality. Also, given the length of all the content we have in this session, we're not going to be able to provide a live chat or Q&A session at the end of the engagement. We realize that many of you have BRIC-related questions. Please know we will going to be able to have lots of Q&A time a little bit later in the summer after our notice of funding opportunity is released. We plan on having a section of webinars in both August and September. More information to come on those, so please look out for those dates and times. If you do have a technical question or experiencing technical difficulty, please use the Q&A pod at the bottom of your screen, and we'll have one of our moderators come and help you. Also, you'll notice there's a file download section. In that, you can download a copy of today's presentation, as well as an infographic we have on the BRIC program. So to give you a little bit of overview of what we're going to cover today, we're very excited to have Mr. Pete Gaynor, our administrator, who will provide an introduction to today's session. He will then turn it over to Russell Strickland, who is the Executive Director of Maryland's Emergency Management Agency. He is also the co-chair of the Resiliency Committee for NEMA, the National Emergency Management Association, who's going to give us a state perspective. After that, I'm going to give a general overview or a short overview of the BRIC program. I'm going to be followed by Jan Riley, who's one of our emergency management specialists in the Community Infrastructure Resiliency Branch at FEMA, who's going to talk a little bit about what we mean by infrastructure and resiliency. Then we're going to go to Angie Gladwell, who's the Deputy Assistant Administrator for Risk Management. She's going to talk a little bit about community resiliency. And then finally, I'll come back on to talk about partnerships and what that means in the BRIC program. So with that, Mr. Gaynor, I hand it over to you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Pete Gaynor, the FEMA Administrator, so thanks for joining us today. I see there's almost 500 people on today's webinar, so I appreciate the interest. First of all, I have to show off what I'm wearing today. Is mitigation is the center of the universe, so I thank Russ and his team for giving me this shirt. I tell people that I am a true believer, and I hope I demonstrated a little bit here today. So we are excited here at FEMA about the launch of the BRIC program, Building Resilient Infrastructure Communities. The launch, we have fully embraced what we believe is a game-changing opportunity to move mitigation forward across the nation in a big way. And I want to thank Congress almost a year and a half ago for passing the Disaster Recovery Reform Act, or DRA, that allowed us to implement the BRIC program. And the funding, I think, for this is quite unique. The funding, 6% set aside from all disasters that go into a fund that will fund BRIC program. So again, disasters will fund this program, and hopefully, if it all works out, we'll have less disasters and we'll be successful. And we have to be ready for whatever the next disaster is. And I know a lot of you, many of you, most all of you have been dealing with COVID-19. I know many of you have been dealing with wildfires and flooding and tornadoes. We're in hurricane season. I was just looking at my email today, and 98L on the East Coast has a high chance of becoming a tropical storm, so it really never ends. But you have to be ready for everything, and I think the BRIC program will help us get there a little bit faster. And if you've been looking at, especially if you're on the East Coast, the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season forecast, above normal season this year, and you know, I'm a believer that, yeah, I'm gonna look at what NOAA has to say for the forecast. But we all know it only takes one hurricane to really ruin everyone's day. But again, we want to be aware of our hazards and our threats, and we want to make sure we invest in them ahead of time to make sure that we're ready for anything that's possible. And again, going back to COVID-19, a lot of things that we have done we had not done before. In some cases, we were more than ready. In other cases, we face new challenges, and we need to be ready for those new challenges. And again, I think BRIC is a means to leverage all that goodness and mitigate to defend against disaster damages in the future, no matter where they may come from. So again, we are excited about BRIC here at FEMA. And resilience, you know, it takes place before disaster strikes, and it really is a result of state and local governments taking that action, you know, at the local level, at the state level. And, you know, I've had the opportunity to be a local emergency manager and a state director, and now the FEMA Administrator, and so it takes all of government to make sure that we properly invest in mitigation right from the beginning, right from the lowest level. And that's where most of these mitigation programs come from. They don't come from top-down federal programs. Most likely they don't come from state top-down to locals. They really come from locals, looking at what their hazards are, looking at what their risks are, looking at what past disasters have done in their communities, and taking action to make sure it doesn't happen again. And again, BRIC gets us hopefully a little closer to the goal. Probably 2 years ago, we released the FEMA 2018-2020 strategic plan that provides a framework not only for FEMA, for all partners, local, state, tribal, territorial, to support people before, during, and after disasters. And so that plan is in place. Our first goal in that plan is to build a culture of preparedness within our communities and governments that will support the national effort to be ready for any disaster. So if you hadn't had a chance to review the strategic plan, I invite you to go back and look at that. We use it every day here at FEMA. And again, building a culture of preparedness really supports the BRIC initiative. Another thing that we wanted to try to leverage with BRIC is to focus on lifelines. I know many of you are familiar with community lifelines, but we really wanted to make sure that, hey, using this BRIC money, based on that 6% set aside for disasters, can we protect the things that are important to us? And so there's 7 lifelines. I won't go through them all, but things like transportation and energy. And if you can make those more resilient during the next disaster, maybe your community can bounce back a little bit quicker. So we're trying to aim them at the things that matter, and those community lifelines help us get there a little bit quicker. Back in August of last year, we released the National Mitigation Investment Strategy, again, to help guide states and locals, tribes, and territories to make proper investments or smart investments in mitigation. BRIC is a way that we're going to transform those investments and make sure we build community capacity to increase resilience. That is our goal. And we do that now in a number of different ways, not just we're not just waiting for BRIC to do it. We have other programs like Pre-Disaster Mitigation. We do grant funding, technical assistance, training, and other activities during and after disasters to make sure communities are ready. We also use the National Flood Insurance Program to make sure that communities are prepared before disaster. And if you're in a flood zone, first of all, hopefully everyone knows their risk, but if you're in a flood zone and don't have flood insurance, you should really get flood insurance because it is the best defense. One of the things I think we all are excited about BRIC is the reliable stream of funding that will come with it. Historically, PDM grants probably average $50 million a year. It sounds like a lot of money, but when you have to spread that PDM money across the country, $50 million doesn't really go that far, and the results of spending that $50 million across the country in a really thin way, it's hard to show results. So the the funding that will come from the 6% set-aside, I think will help us do more meaningful projects across the nation, again, to help build community resilience and to make lifelines more resilient and more stable. We want you to be creative. We want you to be innovative. We want you to build strategic partnerships across your states, your locals, and private sector partners to bring life-saving infrastructure projects to fruition. And that's how I look at mitigation. It's just not a construction project. It's just not another project in a long list of projects. It really is a way to do life-saving, right? Get people out of the danger zone, out of the risk zone, and really make that infrastructure designed to save lives, minimize damages, and that really is our goal. We cannot do this without you. This is a shared responsibility, BRIC, and again, your support, state, locals, tribes, territories, are crucial in making BRIC successful. And I know there's lots of innovative ideas out there. I think part of the problem in the past is there hasn't been enough money to fund all those great ideas. So again, we ask locals and states to really take a hard look at innovative, creative ways to use this mitigation money. We've invested in planning in the past, and planning is important. And we've invested in things that, again, with $50 million, you can't do big projects or projects that maybe are more complicated, take more time. So we really want you to be creative. We want you to be innovative. We want you to push the limits on BRIC. And the NOFO and the guide will be out shortly. And we look for your honest feedback in that. If we've missed something, we want to hear back from you. When we built the policy for BRIC, we built the NOVO for BRIC. I think we collected almost 5,000 inputs from BRIC or from mitigation stakeholders across the country. So that won't change with the rollout of BRIC. We'll still want to hear from you about what's working, what's not working, what you would like to do, maybe because the policy doesn't fit exactly. So I would say the more feedback you give us, the better the program is in the long run. So we want to hear back from you. I also understand, especially over the past 4 or 5 months, the difficulties that all of us have had facing COVID-19 response. And speaking on behalf of FEMA, for the most part, that's been our focus. Response to COVID has really been our major effort, and it will continue to be our major effort. But that doesn't mean we can't do multiple things at the same time. So again, I know it's difficult. I know in some cases budgets are impacted at the local and state by COVID-19 response. But mitigation is an investment to reduce injuries, loss of life, and property either before or during a disaster. So just remember that. It's important that you try to convince your local leaders, your local mayor, your town manager, your tribal chief, your governor that, hey, this investment in mitigation is in the best interest of your taxpayers, your constituents, no matter where you are. And I tell a story when I go out on the road about things that I wish I did differently, being a state director. And one of them was I wish I did more mitigation. Not that I didn't do mitigation. I just wish I did a little bit more. And I think now with BRIC, the little bit more for everyone is much more available, much more money. You'll have greater leeway in creativity and innovation. And so I ask all of you to do as much mitigation as you can possibly bear, because I think that is really the success of an emergency management program. It's the success of a local mayor or governor in leading his or her jurisdiction to make sure that they protect life and property, and that investment in mitigation does exactly that. So if you have the opportunity to apply for BRIC or be a partner in BRIC, we want you to do that. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to hand it over to Russ Strickland. He's the director of Maryland's Emergency Management Agency, and he's been a tremendous champion in Maryland for mitigation and for mitigation across the country through NEMA. So Russ, thanks for the T-shirt. Mitigation is the center of the universe. I'm a believer, and so take it away.
Well, thank you, Pete. I greatly appreciate that, and I really appreciate the fact that you've got our T-shirt on today. That's very special to everyone who's working hard in the mitigation field. And I really want to take a second to thank you. The fact that you're sitting at the head of FEMA right now as the administrator, and the idea that you have been at the local level and you have been at the state level is so, so important. This BRIC gives us an opportunity to be innovative, as you have mentioned, and it is extremely important to have someone at the helm here who really understands local, state, and now federal government. So we really greatly appreciate your leadership. With that, there are three things I really want to cover today with everyone, and that is three things to kind of keep in mind. And I'll start from the bottom of the list, but it's really the top of the list, and that is, just as Pete had mentioned, and I've got my shirt on too, mitigation is the center of the universe. We have really, really got to focus on that. The efforts we're making today are those efforts that our grandchildren's grandchildren will benefit from. It will truly be a world that is safer, a world that is more resilient, and we'll be practicing continually the culture of preparedness. So it's so extremely important. Second, transformative mitigation requires a whole community partnership to affect change. And that transformative mitigation is probably a term that we haven't used, and we need to start using it because it truly is what we need to do. We need to transform our communities so that they are much more resilient for disasters in the future. And then the third point I want to make is that the National Emergency Managers Association, NEMA, supports BRIC given its potential to fundamentally change mitigation in the United States. Again, just an absolutely incredible opportunity. So if we can have the first slide up that speaks to the state perspective, I would appreciate it. With that, you'll see four little pictures across there, and I think it's really important that we sit and think about what it is, what this opportunity for innovation, but what this overall opportunity is for all of us at the local, state, and federal level. One, it's really going to give us the opportunity to make significant progress in reducing disaster risk with mitigation projects that are community-based. These projects need to have a large impact onto a community rather than just some of the smaller ones we've been doing in the past. And as Pete had alluded to, we haven't had the funding in the past to really do it. Well, now we have some more funding, and it's definitely that opportunity. It's also an opportunity to partnership. It should not only be the government, but it's our opportunity to reach out into the private sector, into the communities, and do everything we can to work with them to build this resilience through mitigation and to really kind of cultivate that whole culture of preparedness. We're working to capitalize on partnerships throughout government and non-government sector to package multiple funding streams together to reduce this risk. That's a real goal of ours, is to bring everyone together. We know very clearly we are not going to respond our way out of this vulnerability. We need to mitigate for the future. And we've got a few success stories in Maryland that I'd really be happy to share with folks. And then if there's anything we can share with folks after this program today, we've not had large amounts of funding in the past to really be able to do the true community-based projects. But we do have several that have worked. One in particular that took almost 20 years to do, but showed dividends very clearly last summer, and that's in the city of Frederick, in Frederick County. There's a Baker Park there. And basically a waterway was built. The park became the reservoir for any flooding. And again, it was a partnership between state, local, federal funding, private sector out of the city was in there. And again, last summer when we had some very severe rains in that area, it definitely worked. I'm sitting right now on Maryland's eastern shore. I look out one way and I see the creek out back, and I look out front and I can see the bay. And I'm also on a satellite connection, so I probably might break up a little bit. But right around the corner from me is a town called Betterton. It's on a river. And one of the projects we're working on there, again, is a community-based project for that entire town. It's to basically build a wall to protect the properties along the shoreline. So those are a couple of really important events that we've had. Another one out in the western part of our state is called the Garden City Mobile Home Park Acquisition and Demolition. And that has been a partnership between several state agencies, the Maryland Emergency Management Agency, and then also the Department of Housing and Community Development, some local agencies to include Allegheny Office of Emergency Management and their planning department, and then community partners, which were really willing property owners and receptive tenants to get involved with it. There was money that was awarded from the HMGP program, and then we were able to leverage some other funding from CDBG funds from HUD. Entailed acquisition of about 7 acres of land that was located in the FEMA mapped floodplain. So we demolished, or in the process of demolishing, 25 mobile home sites, and then the relocation of 15 tenants outside their households. This site will ultimately be returned to a natural state. Measures will be implemented to restore the natural functions of the stream, and erosion control measures will be implemented. And by implementing these measures, this project will have the co-benefit of restoring the natural functions of the floodplain. So again, just a couple items of events, projects that we have done in Maryland that have really paid off. And in vulnerability, which is the new emergency management, we've really got to be looking toward the future. And as we said, we can't respond our way out of vulnerability, but really be able to plan, look ahead, and do good community-based projects. With that, can we have the next slide? So I want to speak just for a couple minutes on the perspective of the National Emergency Managers Association. As was mentioned, I sit as the co-chair for the new Resiliency Committee with that. And that's where we're really focused on trying to build that partnership that we can ultimately build resilience through good mitigation efforts, as well as through good outreach and education kind of efforts. NEMA recognizes this is an important program that has the potential to completely change mitigation strategies across the U.S. It's one time I've seen that all members of NEMA are on board and ready to do everything they can to support FEMA, to support Congress, and then to bring it back home so we support the state and the local projects. This is our opportunity. Across the nation, states require flexibility in applying the BRIC program to their communities, given the geographic differences of the states and territories. And because of that, we've been very, very vocal. With FEMA, we were probably many of those thousands and thousands of comments that were received, and we're here ready to support and work alongside FEMA as a true partner. Funding needs to address the future risk, as we just talked about, the vulnerability. It's not the current risks that we face, since threats and hazards continue to evolve. We have no idea what's next. And we've got to start planning long-term, utilizing good mitigation efforts. And BRIC will need to address large-scale, complex infrastructure projects to adequately meet the needs of today's risk and the risk of tomorrow. So as you can see, the states combined are truly in lockstep with this program. We're interested in moving our nation forward in building out our infrastructure, which is a project of the National Governors Association, so that we have a much safer and much less vulnerable world that we'll be able to hand off to our grandchildren's grandchildren in the future, as I previously mentioned. With that, We greatly appreciate the opportunity to give a state perspective as well as the National Emergency Managers Association perspective today. And I congratulate FEMA on their efforts with this program and know that every state and the organization stands behind you as we push forward in the continuation of BRIC. And we really look forward to that partnership and that exchange as we move through all of this and see what it is we can do to make this world a much better world for everyone. And with that, it's my pleasure to turn this back over to Camille.
Thank you so much, Director Strickland, and thank you, Mr. Gaynor, as well. So what we're going to do with the next few minutes is just provide a really quick, brief overview of the BRIC program as a refresher from last week, or in case you didn't have a chance to attend last week. So starting with where we come from, and the Disaster Recovery Reform Act of 2018 passed in October 5th of 2018, and we are Section 1234. We amend Section 203 of the Stafford Act and replace the Pre-Disaster Mitigation Program, or PDM, that was around for 20 years. As Mr. Gaynor said, we are funded at 6% of post-disaster federal funding. There are 7 different sections of the Stafford Act that fund BRIC, and so at 180 days after every single major disaster declaration, money gets put into our BRIC piggy bank, and once a year we'll break that piggy bank open and we'll put on a grant program. One key piece of that legislation is that who's eligible for the program. The states and territories that have had a major disaster declaration within the past 7 years of the opening of the application period are eligible for BRIC. As of this spring, every single state and territory had a major disaster declaration. So everyone right now in the nation is eligible for the BRIC program. Federally recognized tribes are also eligible for the program, and so they fall under that same rule of the seven years prior for declarations of either their own or any state or territory in which they reside in. So all tribes right now, federally recognized tribes, are also eligible. Administrator Gaynor also talked about our stakeholder engagement that we did in summer of 2019, where we had the over 5,000 non-attributable individual comments at 75 different agency letters. With all that feedback, our leadership got together and created our six guiding principles for the BRIC program, and all of our design has been based on these 6 principles, as well as the feedback we received. So just walking through each one of those. We want to be a program that supports the community capacity and capability building. You'll see that in the name of our program. We'll talk about that today. We want to encourage and enable innovation. You heard Mr. Strickland talk about that. And one thing I always want to say, because I don't want people to be afraid that, I can't be innovative, is we want to meet communities where they are. So how are you being innovative for you? We want to promote partnerships. I'll talk at the end of today's session further about partnerships. We want to enable large infrastructure projects. We want to maintain flexibility, and we see that for a couple of different ways. One, our program is based on post-disaster or disaster funding. So that could ebb and flow from year to year. So we want to be able to have a program that can ebb and flow with the amount of funding we may have in our program from year to year. We also are very serious about it being a program that continually improves. So we learn from ourselves, and we learn what works and what we could potentially do better from year to year. At the same time, we want to provide consistency. We're one of 3 hazard mitigation assistance programs with FMA, Flood Mitigation Assistance, and the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, HMGP. So where it's made sense to align our program with those 2, we have. At the same time, we also, when we were doing design of the program, wanted to make sure we were responding to FEMA's strategic plan. First, about building a culture of preparedness. We see ourselves very firmly fit into that, and we hope to help increase the mitigation investment that's in the country. Second, as we ready the nation for catastrophic disasters, we're looking at focusing our projects on those lifelines so that when a disaster happens, we can recover faster and response can be lessened. And then always, and when anybody standing up a new grant program, we've done our best to reduce the complexity. So we've tried to be very conscious, or we have been very conscious when we're putting the program design together to ensure that we are not making a program more complex than it needs to be. So what are some of those key pieces that make BRIC different? One is, have we set priorities? So you'll see when the NOFO comes up, a Notice of Funding Opportunity in August, priorities centered around lifelines and infrastructure. Building codes are very important to the program. It's actually written in the DRA Section 1234. So that's a key piece. Shared responsibility and partnerships, and that's what today's session part of it is about. We know that no one grant program can do everything or can fund all the mitigation needs that are in the country. We also know if you look at infrastructure, the vast majority is owned by the private sector. So those shared responsibilities and partnerships will be key. And then those innovative projects as well, or innovative approaches to projects, whether that may be funding or partnerships or how you administer. What is that innovation that you're putting into your project? We want to build capability. We're doing that through how we fund or funding different types of projects, such as I'll be talking a little bit later about the partnership projects, building code projects, planning efforts, project scoping efforts to be able to give communities seed money to put their application together. We have a piece of the program, more coming out in the NOFO, that will be in-person, non-financial technical assistance, as well as we heard from our stakeholders that they needed just an examples of what some different projects look like. And so we've created what's called the MAP, the Mitigation Action Portfolio, that will also be released this fall. This is a selection of those case studies. In our program design, we've looked at how we can increase flexibility, both reducing limitations while we increase caps. And as an example of that, the pre-award costs, one of the key differences we've done is previously, pre-award costs are basically costs you can incur before approval for putting an application together. So maybe it's design, engineering, benefit cost analysis, environmental historic preservation work. So we've removed the limitation that you could not start incurring those costs until the opening of the application period, so that you have a longer window or longer time frame to start incurring those costs. Of course, you have to get funded for the projects to be reimbursed. And then streamlining our processes. We do have the FEMA Go system that will be coming online, the FEMA Grant Outcomes, which is our new web-based application system or grant processing system that the applications will go in. We heard that stakeholders wanted more regional authority, so we're looking at how project extensions can be approved at the region. And we're also adding in phase projects, which is an element of the hazard mitigation grant program. Once again, the idea that maybe just a little bit more needs to be done to make an application eligible, but the community needs some funding to do that, whether it might be that final design. So that is done, that money is given as phase 1 money, and then if everything is successful, the phase 2 construction money comes after that. On some of these slides, you will see in the right-hand corner a little icon that's 3 people in a thought bubble. That indicates that elements of that slide were heavily influenced by the stakeholder feedback we received last summer. So with that brief overview, I want to turn it over to Janet Riley, who's going to talk a little bit about both the way we're defining infrastructure and what resilient infrastructure looks like. So Janet, I turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Camille, and I'm thrilled to be here today. So like I said before, I'm Janet Riley, and I'm from the Community Infrastructure Resilience Branch at FEMA, and I'm going to talk about what BRIC actually means, defining infrastructure and resilience. And what we want to do is really try to demystify the buzzwords and emphasize that this is a broad, flexible program with broad definitions, and we hope that applicants are able to envision all types of projects and communities within these parameters. First, let's break down what we mean by infrastructure, and then we'll define resilience. So for infrastructure, here we have critical physical structures, facilities, and systems that provide support to a community, its population, and economy. As you can see, this is broad, It's not just physical structures or large facilities, the types of things that we often picture when we hear infrastructure. This is really designed to be flexible and encompass a wide swath of interpretations in order to fully meet the needs of different communities and projects. In our definition of infrastructure, we include the word critical. While we often think of specific types of structures or services as critical, we really see this as a broad term. And again here, we want critical to be defined by your community. This can be anything that is important to the function of your individual community. And here, the definition of critical can encompass many different services, facilities, or structures. Additionally, non-infrastructure projects will still be funded as part of BRIC, as Camille just said. Things like partnerships and building codes that will help with community resilience goals. Through all of this, remember that BRIC is designed and intended to help make your community more resilient. You know best what is critical for your community. Infrastructure is not just the big stuff. We're thinking broadly about this, and we want you to do the same. Now that we've discussed infrastructure, let's talk about what resilience means. FEMA defines resilience as being able to prepare for anticipated hazards, adapt to changing conditions, and withstand and recover rapidly from disruptions. So what does resilience actually mean in action here? We can pull out some of the different key words in the definition and think about each of them. With BRIC, we want to be able to consider how a proposed project will improve resilience. Does it help the community to prepare, adapt, withstand, or recover from hazards? And here are some things we can think about. With prepare, we want to encourage long-term thinking, just like the administrator said. We want to be able to incorporate changing conditions, including environmental, population, and development patterns, not just the current status quo. We want to identify risk and vulnerable services or facilities in a community to plan ahead and know what might need extra protection or mitigation in the future. To adapt, we want to do things like implement higher building codes and standards, integrate our community plans, like our mitigation, resilience, urban, land use, infrastructure plans, and leverage those best planning practices. In order to withstand, we want to think about utilizing strong communication networks, maintaining access to emergency services, and protecting those lifelines and essential services. We want to minimize the impact of a disaster, especially on people and property. And lastly, we want to think about recovering. How do we build back better using mitigation, codes and standards, and creativity? The fastest disaster recovery is the disaster that you avoid. Building back better can help us break the cycle of disaster impact and rebuilding. There's many actions that communities can do to help speed this recovery process to reduce losses and become more resilient. So let's think about an example project. A proposed project could be designed to retrofit a library to serve as a tornado shelter and could incorporate public art to communicate information about tornado preparedness. This project would help prepare the community for future disasters with educational information, help the community stay safe and withstand a disaster by providing a shelter during the tornado, and help that community recover by providing a safe public space with important services after the hazard. Projects that consider how to prepare, adapt, withstand, and recover from disasters are what we need to build a more resilient community. Remember, BRIC is an opportunity to fund different types of projects and fulfill the resilience needs of your community. We're looking for projects of all shapes and sizes to build resilient infrastructure in communities. And now I will turn it over to Angie Gladwell to define those resilient communities.
Thank you, Janet. Hello, everyone. I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here and to speak with you all about how BRIC builds on and advances the goals and recommendations put forth in the National Mitigation Investment Strategy. As you may know, the investment strategy proposes a single national strategy for the whole community to more effectively and efficiently increase mitigation investment in the United States, all to enhance the nation's resilience to natural hazards and ultimately to build a culture of preparedness. Effective mitigation investments can save lives, property, and money. We know that mitigation reduces the burden on response and it expedites recovery. The Mitigation Framework Leadership Group, also known as the MITFLAG, is a national coordinating structure authorized by the Post-Katrina Emergency Management Reform Act of 2006. It was established to organize mitigation efforts across the federal government with state, local, tribal, and territorial representation. Under this leadership, the investment strategy was collaboratively authored and finalized last August as an interagency effort inclusive of diverse perspectives. The investment strategy has 3 goals. First, to demonstrate how mitigation investments reduce risk. For the general public, we learned that mitigation and resilience is complex and poorly understood, and that we must reorient our risk reduction work and risk communications to align with community goals and priorities. And if we can do this effectively, the whole community will build a shared understanding of mitigation investment and how we can protect people, neighborhoods, ecosystems, and critical lifelines. Building a shared understanding also includes supporting our state, local, tribal, and territorial partners through the types of capability and capacity building efforts supported by the BRIC program. Our second goal is to coordinate mitigation investments in pursuit of reducing risk. Although there are many sources of funding that can be used to reduce risk, we have found that we can do better to align and coordinate those funding sources to meet the needs. In implementing this goal, we're exploring ways to match mitigation funding sources to meet specific needs and provide better access to risk information, which will help reinforce risk reduction strategies and make it easier to access and align funding. The BRIC program's goal to enable high-impact investments specifically supports this goal. And finally, the third goal is to make mitigation investment standard practice. This means that the whole community will factor mitigation into all of its decisions based on strong community planning, new developments, infrastructure upgrades, wetland restoration, and all other investment decisions will consider their risk both now and in the future and build and design accordingly. BRIC will enable new partnerships and catalyze high-impact investments to reduce risk from natural hazards across communities. Again, the investment strategy intends to improve the coordination and effectiveness of mitigation investments. These are investments taken to avoid, reduce, or transfer risks from natural hazards, including severe weather. BRIC's focus on enabling high-impact investments for critical services and public infrastructure directly aligns to this emphasis on mitigation investments. In pursuit of these investments, the strategy was purposely written in plain language so it could be utilized by the whole community. FEMA's strategic goal is to build a culture of preparedness. To achieve this, we need to incentivize investments that reduce risk, including pre-disaster mitigation, and reduce disaster suffering and costs at all levels. We know that those who build their homes to withstand damage fare better, have less damage, recover quicker and faster. In every disaster, we see tremendous benefits and impacts of mitigation. Even now, our efforts to continue with an investment strategy implementation team comprised both of interagency members as well as 9 representatives from state, local, tribal, and territorial partners. And their focus is to share the intent, value, and results of the investment strategy, integrate the investment strategy into existing doctrine, policies, and programs, demonstrate and validate how the investment strategy can be actionable across the whole community, and measure success. We're working to integrate the mitigation investment strategy into a number of existing policies, doctrine, and programs. The creation of a FEMA-wide strategy for building code adoption and enforcement and the guiding principles developed for BRIC are just 2 powerful examples. I also want to highlight an amazing mitigation initiative that shows what's possible when partners come together to align around specific risks and priorities. This year, the Utah Emergency Management Agency identified unreinforced masonry which are unreinforced buildings prone to significant earthquake damage, along the Wasatch Front as a significant risk. The implementation team has been working with FEMA Region 8, the state of Utah, emergency management stakeholders, and mitigation planners in the region to build on their extensive work over the past several years to collaboratively support the development of a risk reduction strategy to address this risk, using the recommendations of the investment strategy to demonstrate how the strategy can be implemented with public and private partners at the local level. This is the very type of action the investment strategy prescribes, and it's what we're hoping BRIC can incentivize in communities across the country. We know that risks from natural hazards are growing, and in tandem, so are the effects of natural disasters on people, community lifelines, businesses, and infrastructure. Success depends on collective action, and there are many ways that our partners can support the investment strategy. As a whole community resource, success in implementing this strategy through efforts like BRIC requires maximum participation from all sectors of society and consistent collaboration between the federal government and all of its vital non-federal partners. As more and more mitigation projects are sourced and investments are made, we will reduce injuries and loss of life, damage to property, and negative effects on the economy and the environment. We encourage you to learn more about the National Mitigation Investment Strategy and pursue opportunities via BRIC in the coming months and years to create more resilient communities and reduce disaster suffering. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you all at future sessions of the BRIC Summer Engagement Series. Now I'd like to turn things over to Camille Crane, who will talk to us about partnerships.
Thanks so much, Angie. Thank you, Janet, as well. So to close out our session today, the last thing I wanted to talk about is partnerships. As I mentioned, partnerships are one of the 6 guiding principles of the BRIC program, and we are looking broadly and with a lot of intention about how we handle partnerships with the program. We are very lucky that we have a lot of people interested in the program at the federal agency level, non-governmental organizations, universities, as well as our traditional state, local, tribal, and territorial partners. So there's a couple of different things we're doing inside of with partnerships that I'll explain. The first is we are starting to put together a partnership framework. This is a long-term effort that I see us developing over the next few years. But with all that interest, how do we bring it together? How do we act as a BRIC program as a catalyst to help increase resiliency with these efforts? So we're looking at our federal partners, as an example, NOAA, our state, local, tribal, and territorial partners, which are our traditional partners in our grant programs, the private sector, and non-governmental. And with that framework, we are hoping to build a network that both is at the federal level as well as at a local level as well. We're looking at how we can use those partners, or how we can work with those partners, I should say, first being champions of the program. And we have a lot of those champions now that want to spread our message, that want to take the information of the BRIC program and put it to their constituents or to their customers who may not be in our traditional audiences. As an example of this, I had a chance to speak to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce back in May. And that was for me to talk to businesses and talk to the private sector about the BRIC program. The second level is service providers. So outside of just being champions, those partners who want to work with us in actually providing services at the federal level, at the regional level, or at a local level, for example. As an example of that, I've been very lucky with NOAA, the National Oceanic Administration, that they have provided details to my office since October to help us with being a subject matter expert on coastal issues, as well as they've been instrumental in helping me frame the partnership network. And then lastly, what we want to grow to is having connectors, potentially funding connectors. You heard Angie talk about a match, having match, where we have our grant programs are 75% federal, 25% non-federal. We also have a definition of small and impoverished communities that ups that cost share to 90% federal and 10% non-federal, but there still is a cost match to our programs. It doesn't have to be cash. It can be in-kind or third-party services, but how can we help communities in the future find these connectors or find these partners that will help them fund. As I said, we're just in the first or beginning stages of this, but it is an integral part of our program that we look to build over the next few years. While we're doing that, though, we also want to help you find partners or help our sub-applicants and applicants find partners. Through our stakeholder engagement and the feedback we got in the summer of 2019, this was an important concept that was brought up of we would like to have a partner, but we don't know how, or we don't know who, or we don't know where. Can you help us with that? So what we've done is under our capacity and capability building projects, we are looking at different funding opportunities or different ways we could actually fund partnerships. That's when I talk about us being very intentional with partnerships. This is one element. We now have it as a fundable activity. So just to give you a very non-exhaustive list, so this is just an example of 6 different things that we could fund in partnerships. And as I said, it's non-exhaustive because we also know that you best may know what you need. So we want to leave that aperture open so you can come up with innovative ideas in applying for partnerships. But if you look at these 6 different examples, they run the gamut from I need to know more about partnerships myself. So that would be providing or attending training on partnerships. Then it might be, okay, I need to know where I need partnerships. Like where would it be most strategic for me to have these partnerships? And that might be doing things like the first one, conducting a capability map or gap or partner network analysis. Then once that's known, then there's the actual, okay, now I need to have space or have time or have resources to meet these people and to gather information. So that may be developing a partner network or hosting a forum or incorporating private sector or lifeline operators into other mitigation planning processes or into mitigation planning processes. So as you can see, there's 6 different examples here that we want to have in partnership. So as a reminder, this is the 2nd week of our stakeholder engagement. This is another way we are hopefully partnering with all of you all and providing a little bit of technical assistance as well. We do have 3 more sessions in the stakeholder engagement coming up. That is July 15th, next week, where we'll be talking with about BRIC and the importance of building codes. July 22nd, we'll be talking about BRIC and community lifelines. And July 29th, we're talking about BRIC and nature-based solutions. I hope you've already registered. I will say our registration has capped out for all 3 of those sessions. We were only able to take 1,500 registrants to make sure we keep a stable system. But as a reminder, all our sessions are being recorded and they are going to be posted on the playlist on FEMA's YouTube channel. So, and since there isn't any live Q&A, watching them through recording, you don't lose any of the content. So hopefully everyone has a chance to view those. As well, just as a reminder, we will be having a series of NOFO webinars, Notice of Funding Opportunity webinars. Right now we're planning them starting mid-August and running throughout August and September. More information is coming on the exact dates and how to register for those webinars. Those are being planned as 90-minute events where Brandon Suiza and I will be giving content on the FEMA Flood Mitigation Assistance Program as well as the BRIC program for roughly an hour, and then we'll be having 30 minutes or more of Q&A time. I want to leave you with a few BRIC resources that hopefully you will bookmark. The first is our BRIC website, and it is at www.fema.gov/BRIC, B-R-I-C. That is where we will post everything related to the BRIC program as it is ready. So right now, if you go on there, you can find the stakeholder feedback report that we did. So when we talk about those 5,000 comments and 75 agency letters, we have a 78-page document saying this is everything we heard and a 4-page summary as well. You also find information about the these stakeholder feedback engagements as well as the infographic. And as the program gets ready to launch with the NOFO coming out in August, you'll find more information on the program at that time too. We also have a link there for the Hazard Mitigation Assistance site, HMA, which is what BRIC falls under. You can go to that website to sign up so you can get updates such as the Mitigation Minute that comes out every Wednesday. I have it on good authority that the one tomorrow the one today will actually have a link to the YouTube video of the first week of the BRIC Summer Engagement Series. As well, you'll see there the link to the Community Lifelines Implementation Toolkit, benefit cost analysis, because the BCA is required for all of our mitigation projects, and then the link for mitigation planning, and finally a link for building codes. Particularly, you'll see there the end of the link is BSEG, which is the Building Code Effectiveness Grading Schedule. That will be important in the program, and so a community will want to know its BSEG score. And if you do not have a BSEG score, ISO can do it, which is the company that administers BSEG, can do a survey for you. You just need to contact them. The survey is free of cost. It does take around roughly 2 to 4 months to complete, so that is something your community may want to look into if you currently do not have a BSEG score. So with that, I would like to thank all of you for attending, as well as I want to thank Administrator Gaynor, Director Strickland, Janin, and Angie providing us content. What you'll see has come up now is a brief survey. We would love your feedback on the session so we can take that feedback and incorporate it into future sessions. I hope you found the content of today's webinar useful and that you will check out our YouTube channel to see the other BRIC presentations if you haven't had a chance to view them. Once again, thank you all for your attention, and we look forward to speaking to some of you next week.